There's a gland deep in your brain, buried between the two hemispheres, that ancient cultures called the seat of the soul. The Egyptians knew about it, the Hindus called it the third eye. Jesus himself spoke about it when he said, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." Not two eyes, one eye. And for thousands of years, mystics and spiritual practitioners have claimed that this gland is your gateway to higher consciousness, to spiritual vision, to direct communion with the divine. But here's where it gets dark. Since 1945, governments have been adding a chemical to your water that accumulates in this gland more than anywhere else in your body. A chemical that calcifies it, that hardens it, that supposedly shuts it down. Coincidence or conspiracy? So we're referring to the pineal gland here, which sits in the center of your brain. It's about the size of a pea, and it's shaped like a pine cone, hence the name spelled P-I-N-E-A-L, pineal. And interestingly, it contains photoreceptor cells, the same kind of cells found in your eyes. In fish, reptiles, and amphibians, the pineal gland is literally a functioning third eye. It has rods and cones, the same retinal tissue that lets you see. Scientists call it a vestigial eye, an eye that evolved backwards into your brain. In mammals like us, those photoreceptor cells are still there. The machinery still exists. The pineal still responds to light. It's literally an eye buried deep in your brain, and ancient cultures seemingly knew this. The Egyptians depicted it as the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye that represented enlightenment and divine vision. The Hindus called it the Anya chakra, the sixth chakra, the third eye, center of spiritual sight. And as we mentioned before, even Jesus in Matthew 6:22 said, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." The single eye, not your two physical eyes, those of us seeing the material world. The single eye is your spiritual eye, your pineal gland, your third eye. And the idea is that when you close both physical eyes, for example in meditation, you activate the spiritual eye. You turn your vision inward. You see the light. When that single eye is open, when your pineal gland is activated, your whole body fills with light. Spiritual light. That's enlightenment. That's spiritual awakening. That's what the mystics have been teaching for millennia. So here's the question. If the pineal gland is this important, if it is your gateway to higher consciousness, why is the government putting a chemical called fluoride in your water? The official reason? Dental health, to prevent cavities, to keep your teeth strong. Fair enough, but there are those that believe it's for a much more sinister reason. In 2001, a scientist named Jennifer Luke published a study. She measured fluoride levels in human pineal glands taken from corpses, and she found that the pineal gland had the highest concentration of fluoride of any soft tissue in the entire body, higher than muscles, higher than organs, even higher than bones in some cases, making the pineal gland the most fluoride-saturated organ in your body. One of the reasons being that the pineal gland sits outside the blood-brain barrier, meaning it has direct access to your bloodstream. So when you drink fluoridated water, when you brush with fluoride toothpaste, when you eat processed food, fluoride goes straight to your pineal gland, and it accumulates, and it binds to calcium deposits, and it calcifies the gland. Your third eye hardens, it shuts down, it stops working as well. So what happens to you when your pineal gland calcifies? Firstly, it produces less melatonin. This is a hormone that helps to regulate your sleep. So your sleep gets disrupted. Your circadian rhythm gets thrown off. Studies have shown that people living in areas with high fluoride in the water have more sleep problems. They go to bed later. They wake up later. They experience more daytime sleepiness. Many also believe that the pineal gland doesn't just regulate sleep, but that it produces a substance called DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is also known as the spirit molecule. In 2013, researchers found DMT in the pineal glands of rats. In 2019, they identified the enzyme that produces DMT in human pineal glands. So DMT is the most powerful, naturally occurring psychedelic compound. It's what shamans use in ayahuasca ceremonies, for example. You'll see geometric patterns, divine beings, a sense of oneness with the universe, and in some cases, direct contact with God. Some researchers believe that the pineal gland releases DMT during deep meditation, during childbirth, during dreams, and also at the moment of death. It's your biological gateway to the spiritual realm, and fluoride calcifies it. It blocks it. It shuts it down. You're walking around with a calcified third eye, a blocked spiritual antenna, a closed gateway. Is it any wonder why so many people feel disconnected, spiritually devoid, or asleep? So here's a real question. Is this intentional? Did someone somewhere decide that keeping the population spiritually asleep was beneficial? That perhaps people who can't access higher consciousness are easier to control? Or is it just an unintended side effect of a well-meaning public health policy? And so, of course, some people believe it's not an accident. In 2024, the National Toxicology Program released a study, and they found that children who consumed water with fluoride levels above a certain level had measurably lower IQ scores. Not slightly lower, significantly lower. And this wasn't some fringe conspiracy. This was the government's own toxicology program admitting that fluoride affects brain development in children. Multiple studies have also linked fluoride exposure to reduced cognitive function, lower IQ in children, behavioral changes, sleep disruption, increased rates of ADHD, mood disorders, anxiety, and depression. Now let me ask you something. If you wanted to create a docile, compliant population, what would you do? Would you make them spiritually disconnected, unable to hear the voice of God? Would you lower their IQ, make them less capable of critical thinking, less able to question authority? Would you disrupt their sleep, keep them tired, foggy, unable to focus? Would you increase anxiety and depression, keep them medicated and dependent on the system? Because supposedly, that's exactly what fluoride does. It calcifies your pineal gland, spiritual antenna, lowers your ability to think critically. It affects your ability to rest and recover, and affects your emotional stability. Now, think about the length of time that this has been happening for. Fluoride was first added to water in 1945 for dental health. On a quick side note here, there are those that believe that the Nazis used it in their camps, although there isn't any actual evidence of this available. But it is interesting, what with the war ending in the same year, 1945, pineal gland's role in spirituality was seemingly known in ancient cultures, but, and I guess somewhat understandably, at least from the spiritual side, was ignored by modern science. Jennifer Luke's study showing fluoride accumulation in the pineal wasn't published until 2001, 56 years after fluoridation started. The neurotoxicity study showing IQ reduction weren't acknowledged by the government until 2024. 79 years later. And of course there are numerous other studies, but it almost looks like these were an afterthought, that no one tested for these effects up front. No one looked, no one asked the questions. Maybe it's not a conspiracy. Maybe it's just ignorance. But what we do know, and at the risk of sounding like a broken record, a population with calcified pineal glands and reduced cognitive function is a population that sleeps poorly, that thinks less clearly, feels disconnected from spirituality, stays locked in material reality, is maybe more likely to question nothing, to obey everything. And whether that's by design or by mistake, you seemingly are easier to control. So what can you do about it? First, understand that you have a pineal gland. You have a third eye. You have the biological machinery and millennia of belief, at least, that it is used for spiritual vision. And although it may have been calcified, it is most certainly not dead. As we mentioned earlier, Jesus said, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." Meditation, stillness, fasting, darkness, these, amongst others, are the ancient practices that are said to activate the pineal gland. Close your two physical eyes. Turn your vision inward. Activate your single eye, and on the practical level, if you are concerned, filter your water. Use fluoride-free toothpaste. Avoid fluoride. Reduce your exposure. And not because I'm telling you that maybe fluoride is evil. Not because I'm telling you that maybe there's a conspiracy. But because your pineal gland is real. Your third eye is real. And you deserve to see what it shows you. As usual, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. And until then, I will see you next time.